I'll play the clip in just a moment. This fake news reporter, working for the fakest name in news, got called fake news while he was reporting fake news by some hecklers live on the air on the Counterfeit News Network.
And Jim, those words there show that the president is still very much learning on the job in terms of empathy, learning on the job in terms of how to react and relate to the individuals here who are, responding to this. But we also saw President Trump after in Corpus Christi, Texas, when he was addressing supporters. He said this outside a fire station in Corpus Christi, Texas.
You're lying. Fake news. Let's watch it again, because the hecklers couldn't have come at a better time, interrupting him right in the middle of him spewing fake news. The president has no empathy. He just hates these poor victims.
And Jim, those words there show that the president is still very much learning on the job in terms of empathy, learning on the job in terms of how to react and relate to the individuals here who are, responding to this. But we also saw President Trump after in Corpus Christi, Texas, when he was addressing supporters. He said this outside a fire station in Corpus Christi, Texas.
He's lying. So then he plays this clip of President Trump addressing the crowds when he visited Texas and holding the Texas flag, and then it comes back to the fake news reporter, and the hecklers are still there.
So that was the president there in Corpus Christi, Texas. He visited Austin here for a briefing. There were a lot of demonstrators here in Austin, not surprising, a liberal city, of course. Now there are some Trump supporters, as you can see, gathering here.
Please send help. I'm being surrounded by Donald Trump supporters. It's a little hard to hear, but the guys kept calling them fake news, and this guy in the blue said that CNN is ISIS, which is referring to an InfoWars contest that Alex Jones held not too long ago.
Now there are some Trump supporters, as you can see, gathering here, Jim, as well. But the president will face this test here of leadership, of government support here, as he's working with Republican senators, as well as Republican congressmen and Democratic congressmen as well here. So despite all the antics going on here, Jim, as you can see, this is a very...
CNN supports Antifa, the guy said. Oh, there's antics going on here, Wolf. Please send help. I do think that these guys were way too nice and way too quiet, but I will give them a B+ for effort. And if they were Antifa, instead of just peacefully trolling the reporter, they would have come and beat him down with clubs and sticks and sent him to the hospital. Here's another clown from the Clown News Network who was also heckled by Trump supporters, peacefully I may add, but unfortunately we don't have any video of it, but he did take to Twitter to complain and to express his shock that such a thing would happen to him. I just walked out onto the tarmac to cover Donald Trump's visit to Corpus and was heckled by a crowd shouting derogatory things. Unbelievable. Oh, the horror, being told mean things. And again, if this was Antifa, they would have just been peacefully heckling and teasing him. They would have been throwing sticks, stones, and bottles of urine at him. And then there's this story from CNN which says, Texas Governor Greg Abbott needs to resign. Why, you may ask? Not from how he's handling the recovery efforts, which, considering how massive and devastating this disaster is, are going surprisingly well. No, but because he's the governor of a state that is known for its oil industry, and so that helped cause the storm, which caused the flood, so he needs to resign. Once the immediate crisis ends, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, should resign with an apology to his state and his country. Then the Texas delegation in Congress should make a public confession. They have lied to their constituents for too long, expecting the rest of America to keep bailing them out. Houston is an oil town, and the American oil industry has been enemy number one of climate truth and climate preparedness. Most oil companies and Texas politicians see nothing, say nothing, and do nothing. Even worse, they hide the truth and then beg for help as needed. Governor Abbott has played this game one disaster too many. Let's check in with Chunk Uger over at the Young Turks. Maybe he can bring some sanity to this story. Horrified at the human toll of Hurricane Harvey. Not sad about the billions of damage to the oil industry. Chickens coming home to roost. Hashtag climate change. Well, what else should we expect from a man who named his YouTube channel after the perpetrators of the Armenian genocide? President Trump was in Texas earlier this week, but he kept his distance from the flood zone because he didn't want his presence to interfere with the recovery efforts. But now that things are finally calming down, he's going to be heading back to Texas, probably going to go and meet with some of the victims, take a little bit closer look of the damage himself. But here's CNN's Jim Acosta, Mr. Fake News himself, who's blocked me on Twitter, by the way. who thinks maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe it's going to be harmful to the whole situation. Right, Jim?
And do you think that the president's visit this weekend will be helpful or harmful? What do you hope to see? I suppose from what you're saying is you want to see him shaking hands and meeting with storm victims.
Just look at this Tom's face. This is a man who is so upset that the storm coverage has eclipsed his constant complaining and conspiracy theories about the president that he could barely contain himself. Yeah. Please tell us how the president's visit is going to hurt this situation. There is some good news, though. Glenn Beck just had to lay off 20% more of his staff over at The Blaze, as his media empire is imploding. This just one day after it was announced that Tomi Lahren just got hired by Fox News as a contributor. As you probably know, Tomi Lahren was the only thing keeping that sinking ship afloat, and he probably should have fired her sooner so that she could go off and get a real job, which thankfully now she has. And to be clear, he didn't fire her because of her pro-choice statements on The View, which I totally disagree with. He fired her because she wouldn't drink his Never Trump Kool-Aid. And it looks like the remaining cult members, like Dana Lash, who has also blocked me on Twitter, are just gonna go down with the sinking ship alongside their guru. I mean, in a few months, Glenn Beck's gonna probably start a Patreon page, like the rest of us YouTubers. Big shout out to my Patreons, by the way. Thanks for all your support. Couldn't do this without you. With the hundreds of millions of dollars that Glenn Beck made at the Fox News channel, by this point, The Blaze should be rivaling Fox News, but he's run it into the ground. It's gonna be really interesting to see what happens in the television news business, because, I mean, let's face it, it's Fox News against MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, Vice News, Fusion, some of the smaller cable channels. It's like 7 against 1, so the market might be ripe for another conservative television news channel. One America News, OAN, is certainly growing in popularity. There's some speculation that Breitbart may launch a cable channel. Just speculation at this point, but who knows? By this point in time, Glenn Beck's The Blaze should have really been competing with Fox News by now, but he ran it into the ground, and Tomi Lahren is the only reason that probably 99% of Americans have ever even heard of The Blaze, and thankfully she's not there anymore, and so it looks like Glenn Beck's The Blaze is going to go the way of MySpace. I'm Mark Dice, thanks for watching. I hope you'll check out my new online store. Check the link in the description below, where you can get some cool stuff like my You Are Fake News shirt, my Liberalism Find a Cure shirt, or some cool coffee mugs. So your purchase helps keep this channel running, so I appreciate everybody's support. Thanks for having my back, guys. Subscribe here if you're new. Check back on Monday. I may not have a video for you guys this weekend. I'm going to be spending a little bit of time on my book, and it is Labor Day weekend. So I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys on Monday.